Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You know, one of the things you notice in life is that older people tend to have a little bit of a hush about them, right? They've experienced ups and downs. They know what it's like to fail. They've worked on themselves and they've incorporated things into their games, their approaches to life, right? That help them, right? They might not discuss it much. They might not say, hey, you know what? I got my ass kicked before, so now I have these safeguards in place. Now I have this protocol in place, right? They might not say that publicly, but you can actually look at the fighter and you could see it. So let's talk about Vladimir Klitschko, because he relates to Joseph Parker, right? Let's talk about Vladimir Klitschko. The Vladimir Klitschko who fought Corey Sanders, the guy leaning forward over his front foot, was a different fighter than who Vladimir Klitschko has evolved into being today, right? Different fighter. That fighter thought he was unbeatable, right? Even though he had lost before that fight, right? The Ross Purity fight. But that Vladimir Klitschko thought he was unbeatable. He came into the ring. It's all about his punching power. It's all about his offense, right? He's in there against a guy who isn't the athlete he is. Doesn't have his height. And he doesn't care, right? He's not going to use length or anything like that. He's in to blow out the other guy. Very little is cautious about that Vladimir Klitschko. Right now people say, oh, he's cautious, he's patient. That Vladimir Klitschko wasn't cautious, wasn't patient. Gets knocked down several times in the fight. Loses the fight, never. Fights Corey Sanders again. Sanders wants the rematch. Big brother Vitaly steps in and takes care of Sanders for little brother. Right? Well, let's look at Vladimir Klitschko today. Vladimir Klitschko today with big-time punching power. Just look at the Kubrat Pulev fight, right? With the kind of power where guys go down, and even when, like Pulev, they get up and they have a point to prove and they want to prove to people they're not hurt, you see the guy's body's not right. That's how hard Vladimir Klitschko hits, right? He's one of the hardest punchers, pound for pound, in the sport. Big-time puncher. But because he's older now, because he's lived a little bit, because he's had moments like the Corey Sanders fight, you'll notice that Vladimir Klitschko, who used to be a hunter, now comes in the ring with a construct of someone who's being hunted, right? He has his hands up, doesn't he? You don't see Vladimir Klitschko out there with hands dangling by his trunks and he's just ad-libbing. No, he has his hands up. He shoots a jab. Doesn't overextend himself early. You're not going to see a first round where he comes out like this, like he did against Corey Sanders, and starts trying to throw home run balls. Right? No, this Vladimir Klitschko, hard to find him. Uses his jab to create distance between himself and an opponent, right? Is cautious now. This is being cautious with one punch knockout power, right? Klitschko had a several year reign as heavyweight champion, fought numerous big time guys, had his own car crashes, right? He's down multiple times against Sam Peter. He loses to Layman Brewster. Right? Let's say Vladimir Klitschko has lived more than a little bit. So now he's older. Now he's smarter. Now he's a little bit more hushed. Not cocky and young, but confident. Right? So, that jab creates distance. He always has a hand up. if you try to jump in on him, he's ready to grab you. Look at the Povetkin fight, right? He has tactics to keep you off of him. This is while he has the offensive game to knock you out with one punch, right? He makes sure that after he throws a punch, he's not in a position to get hit flush. In other words, he throws punches, throws that jab, pulls it back. Right? So if you come back with the right hand, his defense is there. Right? He has his own big right hand. He makes sure he only throws it on you when you're vulnerable. Right after you've been busted up a bit with the left jab. Right? He's not going to come out, throw it early. He paces himself. He makes sure he has gas left in the tank for the later rounds, even though he has a big punch that could end the fight at any time. Right? Just an aside, you understood that he was going to have problems with Tyson Fury. Because Fury, of course, didn't stay in the pocket to be at the end of that jab. Fury himself has height, right? So Vladimir Klitschko couldn't play a length-height game, right? You also understood that Fury could go southpaw, stay southpaw, be good southpaw, just like Terence Crawford is in a different division, and that him going southpaw would mess up the angles on Klitschko's jab. But I digress. Let's get back to Joseph Parker. In my opinion, the best part of Parker's game, and no one talks about it, is his jab. Folks, it's excellent. It's a little bit different than the Klitschko jab, which is kind of like a Larry Holmes jab, right? The Klitschko jab is really a big thudding power punch that hits you in the head, and you see guys have their head snap back. Very hard to get by the Vladimir Klitschko jab, right? Just like Larry Holmes had a great jab, same thing, right? The fight doesn't start till you get past the man's jab. Now, Parker's a little bit different. Whereas those guys would hit you with one stiff jab, pull it back, right? See an opening, hit you with another stiff jab, pull it back. Joseph Parker will actually throw 2, 3 jabs, right? And he's explosive with it. His jab's really more of a jackhammer, right? He'll come in, he'll have his hands like this, then he'll suddenly reach straight forward. It's very straight. It's a faster jab than Vladimir Klitschko's. And he'll just pile drive it into you. Pap, pap, pap. Right? Now understand how dangerous that is. Every time you throw a jab, you're giving the other guy a chance to counter you. Right? Throw the jab too low, the guy could come over the top of the jab. Throw the jab too high, the guy could come in and work your rib cage. But you see, Joseph Parker hasn't had a Corey Sanders moment in his career. He's an unbeaten fighter. He doesn't see the risks of having loose brakes because he hasn't been in a car crash. Let me go one step further. In addition to a great jab, just like Vladimir Klitschko's, right? Only more of a jackhammer jab. Joseph Parker has an excellent right hand. Folks, it's Vladimir Klitschko quality. Right? Joseph Parker hits you with that right hand, folks. You don't have to worry about the second or third punch. You're out. Right? Joseph Parker's opponents, some of them look like they were moving when they got hit. And it's as if the lights went out while their bodies were moving. Right? He has a great right hand. It's spectacular. Now, here's the problem. In fact, problem's too strong a word. Here's the concern that I have about Joseph Parker. Right? A guy who's lived a bit. Vladimir Klitschko, even with the offensive skills, right? Big left hook up front, right? Great jab, great straight right hand. Even with Vladimir Klitschko's tools, regardless of who Vladimir Klitschko is fighting, Vladimir Klitschko starts fights with his hands up, right? He's playing defense. He's thinking defensively. He's not jumping in the pocket and trying to unload. No, look at the Kubrat Pulev fight, right? He's standing back. He's setting up his shots. He's making sure he's not overextended. He's making sure he's not vulnerable to counters. Now, what I want people to do is to contrast that with Joseph Parker. Right? Joseph Parker's 6'4", folks. There's a lot of him. Right? He's 6'4", just like there's a lot of Vladimir Klitschko. Klitschko's even taller. But because Joseph Parker hasn't had any car crashes, because he's a younger guy who hasn't had the setbacks that life dishes out really to all of us, right? Donald Trump, multi-billionaire, has had companies declare bankruptcy, hasn't he? Right? Because Joseph Parker hasn't been there in life. When you watch Joseph Parker fights, it's all about him being a hunter. Right? He doesn't have his hands up like this. He doesn't have a defensive construct that's constant. When the bullets start flying, he starts throwing punches. Folks, if you're not going to defend yourself when the bullets start flying, then you're missing the point of defense. Right? To me, there is too much of Joseph Parker to hit. Right? He's flat-footed. He's usually coming forward. When he opens up, guys can hit him back. He's not rolling with punches. He doesn't have a hand up. He doesn't have the instincts of, let's say, Vitaly Klitschko, where the punches start flying and Vitaly Klitschko or Ali, another tall fighter, look up his height, they lean. They anticipate your punches coming back. They anticipate that they're going to have to play defense. Right? Think young Mike Tyson. Hellacious puncher. Ridiculous offensive game. But you might remember young Mike Tyson had his hands like this and he'd be moving his head, wouldn't he? He didn't just walk in and take shots and throw. No, he was moving side to side. He was trying to dodge what you're throwing. Now I look at Joseph Parker and I'm just not sure if Joseph Parker understands that he could get hurt by big shots from an opponent. Right? I see him, his offensive game's explosive. But he's standing too upright, he's too flat-footed, he's not rolling with punches, he's a guy who does unto others and then splits. Right? He's not a guy expecting a back and forth. Now, Carlos Takam, and I understand he's in his mid-30s, but you should understand we're talking about the heavyweight division. And whatever the calendar says, understand that heavyweights professionally age more slowly than rest of us. Right? In other words, some of these lighter weights, a guy gets to 30 and, he's on the downside of his career. You get up to heavyweight, and I'm just telling you, guys like Povetkin in his 30s, Carlos Takam in his 30s, Vladimir Klitschko late 30s, right? These guys are all viable. Heavyweights mature later in life. Sure, you have exceptions, right? Ali was an early riser. Mike Tyson was an early riser. But I'm just telling you, look at the birth dates, look at the ages of some of the elite heavyweights out there. Right? Carlos Takam, in my opinion, is in his prime. Now, we all know, those of us who follow, let's say, basketball, we all know that college basketball is not pro basketball. If you're a baseball person, you understand that the minor leagues is not the major leagues. Right? If you're a boxing fan, please understand that there's fighting guys, and then there's fighting real contenders. Right? In a sense, it's a minor league, big league system. Now, Carlos Takam went to Russia, went to Moscow, and fought Alexander Povetkin, who, in my opinion, is underrated. I fully expect Alexander Povetkin to take Deontay Wilder's title if that fight happens. Right? Let me go one step further. I do not expect Deontay Wilder in that fight to do as well as Carlos Takam did against Povetkin. Right? Understand, Takam was winning the fight after 4 rounds. They announced the scoring. It was open scoring, which I hate, by the way, but that's another video. After 8 rounds, the fight was even. Right? Takam has already traveled to fight a lion in its own jungle. Right? Takam has been in the big leagues. Right? He's had other big league fights. His level of opposition has been, let's just say, much more accomplished than Cali Meehan. And some of the other guys Joseph Parker has fought. To say that this is a huge step up for Joseph Parker is an understatement. The bet I'm recommending, and understand my bias, I believe underdogs are mispriced in boxing. The bet I'm recommending here is to take Carlos Takam. Right? He's an angles guy. He's a guy who throws a lot of power shots. He's a guy who knows to duck his head, lean down. He's the shorter man in this fight. And go to the body. Right? He hit Alexander Povetkin several times in the body. Understand, as good as Carlos Takam is offensively, he's been around, like Vladimir Klitschko. Right? He has a defensive construct. I like Takam to win the fight. Over, of course, the much more hyped Joseph Parker. I like Takam to win the fight. But I'm going to hedge the play with Parker by KO because, of course, in this new era of heavyweights, right, any fight involving Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder, or Anthony Joshua, you have to contemplate the possibility of them landing and knocking you out. Right? All of those guys have one-punch KO capability. Parker certainly has a huge and short right hand. There's no question about that. He also has a left hook, but it's really more of a slap to me. Parker seems to slap a little bit. Right? Maybe he has Joe Calzaghe in his corner. I don't know. But I'll say this. If Parker doesn't get the stoppage, he's in trouble. Right? Just like I expect Adrian Broner to be in trouble against Ashley Theophane. I know many of you here online disagree with me. I'm just telling you my bias. You could either write me off and say Dwyer is crazy, or realize that foot speed, balance, experience, it all matters. Right? Takam, to me, is going to be able to get underneath Joseph Parker, who fights too straight up. Takam's accustomed to shootouts. He has several high output rounds against Alexander Povetkin where they're both throwing punches. That fight, simply put, was one of the best heavyweight fights of the last 5 years. Right? Takam is the gunfighter who has been in shootouts. You know the personality type. He's not afraid to unload. He'll unload, he'll bounce to the side, he'll try to keep that party going. Now, all I'm saying is, while Takam, while he unloads, knows to bend at the waist and have his head behind his shoulder and, hit you in the stomach and then move away and stuff, while he's thinking that his opponent might come after him. You're going to have Joseph Parker there who expects his opponent to just fall down. Right? You're going to have Joseph Parker there who doesn't know how to hide his 6'4" frame. Right? Parker's going to be returning fire. Right? It's going to be an offensive shootout. The question, though, is whether Parker has enough defense to continue to return fire. Folks, I have my doubts. So I'm taking the underdog here. I'm taking Carlos Takam. I'll hedge the play with Joseph Parker by KO. But understand what that means. If this fight goes the distance and the favorite wins, you lose it all. This is gambling. The outcomes can be severe. Proceed with caution. I like Takam. I think he's underrated. I don't believe in boxing that a win is a win. I think you also have to consider the quality of the opposition. I know many people are going to say, hey, didn't Takam lose to Povetkin? I'll tell you what, Takam beat Tony Thompson. Right? Takam had quality fights. Didn't Takam tie with Mike Perez? Right? Understand, I'm naming fighters who, in my opinion, at the time Takam fought them, were better than anyone Joseph Parker has fought. So now these young guys, they've gone through the early part of their career where they're fighting milk drivers, right? Milk truck drivers, and, moonlighting construction workers. Okay, great. Now they're in the big leagues. Now Parker's taking on a guy who traveled to Moscow to fight Alexander Povetkin. Right? I'm not sure if his past experience has fully prepared him for what's about to happen. Let me say this too. These guys have a lot of people around them giving them advice. But we all have egos. It's much easier to tell a guy who's been in car crashes, buddy, make sure to look in your rearview mirror. Right? If you've gotten speeding tickets in the past, it's much easier to tell that guy, hey, remember, look at the speedometer. Right? This is a speed trap here. If you've lived a little bit and you hear the advice, you understand you need to take that advice. Now try telling that to someone who, of course, hasn't lived a little bit, right? Who, has been speeding through life and has never been ticketed, right? You go up to that person and you say, hey, look out for cops. You need to watch your speed. The guy's going to say, yeah, all right, man. Dwyer, I appreciate it. Thanks. Right? They're not going to take it as seriously as someone who has had problems. Right? All I'm saying is Carlos Takam has fought a higher level of opposition. He has a defensive construct. Right? He's been in big fights on the road. Right? He gave away too much of that Mike Perez fight. Had to come back to get the draw in that one. He understands the importance of pacing that comes from experiences like that. Joseph Parker is a young pup. I know we're all excited about the latest model. I know we always like, new things and stuff like that. But as you are intrigued by these new school of fighters, right? Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, just understand that these guys don't have the experience and might not have the defense that comes from that experience. Right? Vladimir Klitschko, better fighter today than he was when he lost to Corey Sanders. Right? According to the movie Klitschko, Big Brother Vitaly at one point told Vladimir he needed to hang it up. Right? Vladimir Klitschko has changed his game. He's retooled. Now, even a guy with one of the biggest punches in boxing enters the ring thinking, hey, I have to protect myself. I can't have myself exposed. When the bullets start flying, I have to think about what's coming back. I need to have a hand up. I need to clinch my opponent. I don't think Joseph Parker is there yet. I think this is a very dangerous fight for him. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Yes, I'm picking on an unbeaten fighter. I'll tell you what, a lot of fighters start out unbeaten. A lot of fighters have 1 or 2 losses now, right? That's the way the sport is. Anyway, that's how I see it. The bet I like is the underdog to win. Carlos Takam hedged with the favorite by KO. Right? That's what I like. Let me hear what you like. Leave your comments for us in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.